Marvel has been slowly revealing the result of the X-Men election all week long via short-form comic strips. You probably all know about the X-Men election by now, but in case you don't, it was a fan engagement tactic put on by Marvel this past winter. 10 mutants were on the ballot to become X-Men, and fans were allowed to vote for their favorite character for who they wanted to see join the team. The new team would be unveiled this upcoming summer during the Hellfire Gala event. Odds were heavily favored towards Polaris winning, and lo, the final result did not disappoint. Although I am sad that we don't get to see oddball mutants like Tempo or Strong Guy join the X ranks, there's no denying that Polaris is totally worthy of the gig. In my personal opinion, it feels a little bit moot because she's already been an X-Man many times before, and, well, she's already a recurring character in X Factor, so it's not like she's not already having her time to shine. I think it would have been a lot more fun to give someone else a shot who isn't already being featured in a book, but it appears that the mass fandom disagrees with me, and Lady Lorna will be upgrading her costuming to the big leagues this summer. In any case, I think everyone deserves a bravo for putting their names into the ballot, so let's take a look at their comic strips that were released this past week. Forge and Strong Guy. The first characters to have been announced as losers were Forge and Strong Guy. Forge isn't really a super engaging character in my opinion, beyond his wit and charm, so this outcome didn't surprise me. His power is not flashy, and he's really just used as like a team technician for the most part. So I don't think that Forge could really hope to live up to the hype for fans who want to see flashy power battle scenes in their comics. Likewise for this election, I didn't think that Strong Guy ever stood a chance in hell of winning, pun intended. Even though I think that he's had a lot of character growth over the years, I think the majority of people who remember him only see the old goofy side of him and view him more as like a Jersey Shore sort of caricature trope. Even though Xavier himself has repeatedly said how much of an asset Guido is to the X-verse, I'm not surprised that the fandom still sleeps on him, and it's really a shame because he's someone who I think could really thrive in the X-Men's uniform. Tempo and Boom Boom. The next pair to be announced as losers were Tempo and Boom Boom. This comic was crushing for me to see, because if Tempo didn't win, then Boom Boom was definitely a second runner-up for me. This is also my favorite comic of the batch because I think it's the funniest and the only one where someone actually uses their powers. Boom Boom is great comic relief, and this strip is demonstrative of the levity that she could have brought to the X-Men. It would have been wild to see Boom Boom an actual full-fledged member of the main team, to be honest. She's such a hot mess of a character, but I mean that in like the most flattering of ways. I love that she's unapologetically herself and that she doesn't give a shit about what people think of her. Her confidence comes from a very deep-rooted lack of self-esteem, and I think that that is such a great trait to derive compelling story from. And then of course Tempo, my poor Tempo. There was a huge uptake in popularity over Tempo getting on the team during this election. I noticed a lot of support for her in both the Twitter and the Instagram X-Men communities, and I honestly thought she stood a chance in winning this whole thing. I think a lot of people saw the same potential that I see in her. Not only are her powers super fun and useful, but it's also because she really deserves the chance to have some decent character development. Marvel did really great stuff with her in the 90s, and even though she wasn't in a lot of comics, and she hasn't nearly been as omnipresent in the books as many of the other people on this ballot have been, she surprisingly has a pretty decent fan base behind her. At the end of the day, I just hope that Marvel took notice of the keen interest that we, the fans, had in giving Tempo the vote, and I hope that it's enough to catapult her into some sort of book or a team or just to feature her anywhere. Somewhere, please. Marrow and Armor. The next set of losers are Marrow and Armor. I'll be honest about Armor, I also didn't think that she was going to get this gig. She feels like she's a character who's been absent for so long, like Tempo in that way, but at least Tempo's enough of an oddball choice to spark some interest and hype around, whereas Armor doesn't really have that captivating characterization that will set her apart and above 9 other really interesting and fleshed out characters. I do like Armor, and I think that she deserves a shot to be an X-Man, but in my opinion, she peaked pretty much as soon as she debuted, and anything after her run in Astonishing X-Men has just been pretty meh. Granted, a run on the official X-Men roster would probably give her that opportunity to bolster out some great scenes and get people talking about her again, but unfortunately, it just didn't seem like this was her time. Marrow, on the other hand, I think also had a shot at this. People who like Marrow really like Marrow, and she definitely adds an edge to any team she's on. She's perpetually in a bad mood, which is fun, if not sometimes one note, but she's also grown a lot through her tenure as both a hero and a villain. I think the more that the Marvel office can pair heroes up with villainous type characters like Marrow, the more interesting these X books and new X teams will be. It does look like Marrow is going to be featured in some of the upcoming X books anyway, so it's not a huge loss to see her lose this election, but it still would have been a very gratifying moment to see someone who was once just a rank-and-file Morlock achieve the honorific greatness of becoming a fan-voted X-Man. Cannonball and Sunspot. I wasn't too keen on either of these two winning the election. Cannonball is an X-Man. I feel like we've seen it before a few times, and it doesn't really jive with his new focus on his family in outer space. I feel like it would have been a bit regressive for his character, and truly him hunkering down and becoming more of a family man is actually a lot more demonstrative of his growth, and it's a look toward new and different stories that the Marvel team can craft around his character. Going back into the X ranks just felt a bit derivative for him at this point. Sunspot would have been an alright choice though. I love his cocky hot-headedness, and I think it would have been fun to see him get the vote over Cannonball, since the two of them are best friends but also always trying to one-up each other anyway. Whereas Cannonball is always the straight-laced Cyclops trope of the two, Sunspot is more the free spirit, almost Wolverine type, and I would have liked to have seen how this sudden power shift between them might have affected their relationship. Also, on a purely team level, I think Sunspot is a fun character to play with. Sort of like Boom Boom, he can add levity to a situation, usually by referencing his money or how he's such a lady killer, but I also sort of get the impression that Sunspot doesn't really need the X-Men anymore. He's already achieved greatness with the Avengers and buying AIM and blah blah blah, so it really kind of feels like he's over all of this anyway. Banshee and Polaris. Banshee and Polaris were the final two in this election. I was personally hoping that some of that old Irish luck would prevail and that Banshee would win out over Lorna, if only because it would have been a shakeup to what we all expected. I also think that Banshee is truly deserving of a redemption arc. He's been killed and resurrected and comatose and zombified so much over the past decade that it just feels like we haven't really seen the true Banshee in action in such a long time. I think that people think that Banshee might be too stuffy to be on an X team, but I just want to remind everyone about how awesome he was during the Phalanx Covenant crossover, because he single-handedly pretty much carried that event to success and really has a lot more to offer than people think he does. But Polaris is the winner, and I must say, not undeservedly so. She's a great character with a breadth of history and tons of complicated backstory crises that she's managed to overcome time after time, so it will be great to watch her flourish on this new team of X-Men. She's a super powerhouse and will pack a lot of punch to whatever the X-Men get up to. Of course, now that the winner has been revealed, the true question is, who will the other X-members of this team be? I sort of secretly hope that some of these losers might get a callback, like maybe Boom Boom or Tempo, but I also hope that Marvel doesn't do something so predictable as that, and that they dig deep into the recesses of the X-lore instead, and find some really obscure characters to fill out these ranks. I'm sure that won't really be the case, and we can probably expect a few of the common names to come around, but all I'm asking for is like a Fantasia or a Dragon S, and I'd even just settle for a Dazzler. Let me know what you thought of these election results, and if you have any specific desires for who you want to see join Polaris in her new X-Men duties. Feel free to subscribe for more of this sort of X content, and be sure to come back again soon for more Great X-Mentations.